okay, because that development has opened up the development of that particular vicinity. So that is what we should leverage on this particular project to open up other sections of. So we could go to other. It should be in the capital, yes, but we can go to any other place. Okay, Pram or on the Dodoa Road or anywhere, so that that local economy can also develop. So if you're asking me, yes, I mean we should change the location. One, we should reconstitute the board. I mean that is just a fact. Bring in some clergymen, but also bring in professionals. The work is professional, and in fact, the major hurdle of the project as it is structured is raising money. It is not anything clerical. So you need people with the competence to raise funds. Yeah, that is what the hurdle of the project is, getting money ready. If you don't have money, you can bring in 20 bishops. It doesn't add anything to the success of the project. Okay, so yes, those are the things. Reconstitute the board. Obviously, the project cost, that is too high. I mean, it is too high because of the dynamics of the location. I mean, you have to break a lot of buildings before you start. If you went outside of Accra, you could get a flat land, even 20 acres. And then, so if you ask me what I would do, yes, I think there are talks recently about the president looking at creating another region, is another capital
city. Another
capital city. Okay, so this is an opportunity for those in charge of the project to go lobby for a bare land. Okay. You can get all that you want, 20 acres, 50 acres. Properly plan it. You are not demolishing anything. So you start, all the money you start, you get, it goes straight into the construction. And then we start, and then we'll build it around the new capital or the new city. And then so these are some of the things that we can do.
That's very good. You will continue the path you are taking us through. But like you mentioned, I saw the communication from the presidency, and President John Dramani Mahama did indicate that the location is possibly going to be within an enclave that will encompass the Volta, Eastern, some portions of Eastern and some portion of the Greater Accra. And so that leads us towards the Afienya Road, that side, And that is a very good suggestion coming from you, that we could leverage on that to resituate the National Cathedral.
Exactly, because where it is now, we need to, you don't build a facility that require a lot of people moving in at the current location. No. You need easy use. So we have what we call the less use case. Okay, we don't have a lot of human traffic moving there because it is already congested.
Right. That's very true, and you have provided a good source of information, or a great deal of information on how to properly restructure the project going forward. And we would be taking a short commercial break, and we'll be getting back to you. Keep your comments coming in, and let's continue the discussion. Thank you. Welcome back, viewers, and thank you for staying and sticking with us. We are also looking forward to you joining the conversation by sending us your comments. If you have any questions, you can send it through the comment section. Do invite your colleagues to join the conversation, like, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. That is the way of your support, ensuring that we'll be able to bring you much more exciting episodes in the coming days and beyond. Once again, you are live on Frank's Project Pulse, where we detect the pulse of every project. And if you were with us before we went on the break, we were trying to look at the pulse of the National Cathedral project. And our guest here, our panelist here today, Percy, has been giving us some very, very insightful golden nuggets that are easily applicable on any other project, not only on the National Cathedral project. Percy, you did indicate, whilst trying to walk us through what you would do if you should take up this project as the project manager or the project leader. And you have indicated that the location of the project should be changed. You would want it changed. You have also indicated that you would want to reconstitute the board to bring in professionals, and that one of the major hurdles that the project has to scale is the securing of funding. So we need professional fundraisers who will be able to raise the fund, project managers, procurement professionals, and other specialists on that board. You have also spoken about traffic assessment and other developmental issues that may come as a result of the edifice, and that could compound the traffic situation that we already have in that part of the central district of Accra. Now, we would allow you to walk us through the rest of the journey as you take up that project. But we want to find out, if you look at the budget for that project, the $400 million budget, about $58 million has already been paid. Now, let's look at a situation where you have taken up this project and you decide to relocate the location, relocate the project. What happens to the $58 million that has been spent on that, as it were, old location?
Okay. So, well, from a project management perspective, it is already so we are not discussing what should be done, whether there are other ways to recover or to know. So we are talking about it is gone. I think that it is gone.
Okay.
The best we can do now is to put that area, that location, to some other good use. Okay. Some use that is not does not involve the movement of a lot of people, okay, and that will also help as a way of making some recoveries, okay, because the buildings, the structures are already demolished. The old passport office was relocated. That cost $10 million. It's already gone. There is nothing you can do about it. So maybe you should find other use cases for the current location, but in my estimation, it should be use cases that are not traffic heavy, okay, because that whole vicinity already has edifices that can increase the traffic level of that from Rage Roundabout to Accra Sports Stadium. So we can put it to some good use, just as a way or a compensation for whatever is already spent, because the 58 is already gone. Okay. There is nothing. But if you look at the entire project budget, the project budget was 100 million in 2018. By 2022, it was 400 million, 400%. Well, I don't know what. Yes, there was some scope elaboration, but as to whether it's equivalent to 400%, I don't know. Okay. Yeah. But obviously, 400 million is on the high side. I think it's on the high side. Yeah, very high.
Okay, so on the issue of what you would propose the place be used for, do you have any ideas on top of your head?
You mean the current location?
The current location, yes.
Well, I think we can move. Because of its proximity to the Rage Hospital, we can move a section of or a department of the hospital.
Okay.
Let's say maybe the children's block, the entire children's block, so that we have a very modern, well-resourced, magnificent children. Maybe I think Ridge is a tertiary facility. I think so. Yes. So we have a children hospital, or something else. I mean, I'm just suggesting, or maybe another department of the hospital. Then we can carve out a properly built, designed and it can be used for all cases that involve children, or most of the cases that involve children.
Okay.
I think that would be a better use.
Okay, that's great. We also have the Sutherland's Park close by, which is an almost abandoned place. So maybe
maybe as part of their recovery, they can do a playground,
a recreational area,
or as a complement to the children's hospitals, something.
Exactly. That's very, very good suggestion, and I believe those our leaders are watching, and they will be taking a cue from all the very brilliant suggestions that you are proffering here. Would you want to take us on that journey as we are enjoying as a new project manager on that journey? Take us through the rest of the journey by making that project worth the while.
Okay, so we are talking about the relocation, right? Yes, I mean, the entire arrangement for the project was premised on some government support. Okay, initial government support. I mean, I will advise that with the current discussions around getting a new city for the capital, I think that government can contribute to that project by securing quite a sizable piece of land, in this new city for the project. I think that one, and maybe the setup of a secretariat for the project should be enough in terms of government contribution. Government beyond that should not do anything. The team, so government secures the land, government gives them a secretariat, and maybe the secretariat is managed or maybe resourced for a couple of years. The rest should rest on the secretariat to be able to put together the competences that are needed to be able to source funds and build. Luckily, they already have. There's already a design paid for. I think they paid over $20 million for the design. So the design effectively is the property of the state or for the company, the National Cathedral project. So the design is already there. It can be tweaked or it can be modified a bit to fit however the new location will look at. But it should not be equivalent to the same amount, I think. It wouldn't make sense. Yes, so I think that, yes, that is how it should be in terms of project. But I mean, I don't think that if we have a land without any demolitions, like of the level that we had here, I think we should be able to do this under $100 million. We should. We already have a design. Yeah, we should.
So, by your estimation, under 100 million, give or take 100 million, in addition to the 58 million that's already gone. So, but technically, I mean, if the 58 million will not be added to the new project, but obviously, of course, yes, from the spending, which will still be a fair budget, 160 million. Spending. I mean, the Washington Cathedral is 65 million. It's just 65 million. There's one in Nigeria, Abuja, for 30 million. So we can do something not too elaborate. But the beautiful thing is, the beautiful thing about this, it is supposed to be self-sustaining. So after you build the edifice,
you need to be very innovative to generate income to be able to maintain the facility. I think that is even more problematic than
what we've discussed.
Than getting money to build.
Whoa.
Okay. So that is why, in my opinion, if the location is changed, I mean, somewhere in the outskirts, that project will be able to build the local community.
Yeah.
Okay. There will be development.
Yeah.
And this can be regulated. Okay. There will be hotels. So the whole idea is there is a tourism component in accessing the National Cathedral. Yeah. And it will be better if tourists go there. I mean, in the central part of Accra, if I go to the National Cathedral after whatever event, I go home. Yeah. But if it is very far, I can decide to plan
a weekend
around it. Okay. So you can demarcate spaces for tourist attractions. Spaces designed for people who want to build accommodation, because there is no accommodation linked to the National Cathedral. Sites for eateries, restaurants. So all this together will build that community. Okay. And then people will not be under pressure to return whenever they visit the cathedral. And then there will be maximum use of the project to be able to get some income for its sustenance.
Okay. Well, interesting. And you have taken us ahead of the journey, telling us what is likely to happen, even if we were successful in concluding that project at the current location or even at the new location, by the project being able to generate enough funds to sustain itself. And you have already proffered some ideas by providing beautiful accommodation and others that could cause people to plan a longer stay instead of just going in and coming out. Yeah. But before that, we are looking at making the project a success, and you have already set us out on a journey of achieving that. You did mention stakeholder engagement. Beyond the parliamentarians, who you rightly indicated that if 50% of the members of parliament are saying no, it means that close to, or even more, depending on where the MPs are coming from, of the population are saying that they don't want it. Now, here is a situation the leadership of that project was not able to communicate to every Ghanaian. If the MPs were saying they didn't have much information, they were not aware of the secured source of funding and all that, what would the ordinary citizen be saying? Apart from these two groups of people, the parliamentarians and the Ghanaian populace, what do you think are the other stakeholders that should have been brought on board to maybe make things better in terms of the stakeholder engagement, and then how properly the communication should have been structured to make stakeholder engagement better?
Well, okay, so it is a national project. If the communication still stays as a national project, then obviously all key national actors will have to be involved. Okay. So off the top of my head, Parliament, obviously, the executive obviously will drive that. Maybe the National House of Chiefs. There might be institutional, because based on your fundraising drive, there might be international funds, organizations that will be supporting the project. So there can be thresholds. I mean, if you have a charity in the US, for example, making substantial input, it will be wise to carry them along in the project execution. Okay. Stakeholder engagement is supposed to engender confidence in the project. Okay, so somebody makes a donation of $5 million, let's say a charity, to the project. You have to find a way of bringing them on board. Okay. Sometimes for certain classes of your stakeholders, you can take them on project tours, show them updates. Out of your own volition, decide to send them maybe a one-pager briefs or how the progress of the project. What we do that to engender confidence, we open transparency, so that even though they give you 5 million, maybe they have some 2 million there that they can use to support. Okay, so as a national project, you are, well, there are predefined stakeholders, but based on the structure of your funding, I mean, if a private bank or maybe a private telco makes a substantial donation to this project, they become your stakeholder. It is out of courtesy and out of respect and to show transparency. You bring them on board and make sure that, as you would have ordinarily done in your project communication environment, you give them updates. How the project is faring. It shows respect. You are not obliged, but then you are trying to, because of that commitment, that donation, you can place them on a certain level in terms of their interest. Okay, there are different response mechanisms to each stakeholder depending on where they fit on the grid. But if obviously somebody makes a substantial contribution, it means that they have interest. So if the interest in the project is high, you engage them, respond, give them updates, and make sure that you are transparent to them. So yes, the key national actors, Parliament, maybe House of Chiefs, any other national bodies. But in addition to that, you look at some threshold of donations. They become your stakeholders. It means it's a sign of an interest in the project, and you need to go along with them.
Okay, that's very good. You know, in the stakeholder identification, should I say, an engagement, there are mechanisms in terms of how you would properly segregate your stakeholders, classify them, to ensure that you provide each of them just the level and the amount of information and communication that they may require. And stakeholders are also engaged in order to manage their expectations. And like you rightly mentioned, the power interest grid, I would want to look at a situation where maybe the then government thought the opposition was in opposition, so they didn't have much power to influence the project. Now they have that opposition now in government. So their situation as far as the grid is concerned has changed. If government was just ignoring them, how would the dynamics be at this point where they now have power? Assuming in the same context, if you were the project manager, now the opposition who was ignored has the power. How would you engage the opposition party to also get their buy-in into this project?
Okay, so to answer that, one, the first point is sometimes in assessing stakeholders, sometimes it can be fluid. Okay, so fluid or dynamic. I think dynamic is a better expression. So their position on the grid almost always do not remain the same. Okay, now even if you take the previous instance, the opposition still had high influence, because to the extent that a chunk of the money was state money, they had. I mean, that is why they were able to move a censure motion on the finance minister, and he was like compelled to appear before a committee to answer how he's spending on the project. Do you understand? So even though they were, to the extent that you are using some state money, it doesn't matter where you are, whether opposition or power. You have to engage the institution of parliament because there is state money. Now, if the dynamics changed, like I'm suggesting, and government decides not to put a penny inside. Okay. Yes, they are still key stakeholders because it is a national project. But because you now have private funding and you are sourcing your funding, the influence level will not be the same. The interest will remain the same because it is a national project. It is being done in the name of the nation. But to the extent that I will not bring any request for you to look at it and I'll say I approve or I disapprove, then obviously I can reduce your influence level. Okay. And that almost all the time or in most situations happens with stakeholders. Sometimes the position on the grid becomes fluid. So that is why if you have a 2-year project, you don't do a stakeholder mapping in month 1 and assume that it is the same.
It remains the same. Yeah.
No, it is not.
It's a living document.
Exactly.
It keeps changing.
So you will need to periodically, it's like risk management, periodically assess the current position. Maybe the one who was nobody is now the approver.
Somebody, yeah.
So what do you do? The dynamics has changed. So you will need to also adapt to the current situation.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Now, when it comes to stakeholder engagement, a lot of the time you find, especially with national projects, you find the executing institution or government agency having some form of vans and megaphones in the rural areas to make some announcements, and that qualifies for stakeholder engagement. To what extent does faulty stakeholder engagement affect a project?
Well, so they will not appreciate the essence of the project. Do you understand? You are building a market for a community. Yes, there is the need for a market. Okay. But there is also needs to be some alignment in terms of the location of the market. Okay. Why it is location A but not location B. And that obviously will call for some kind of either you engage the market queens or the entire market women or maybe some town hall meetings or something. Because otherwise you finish building the market and it will be there. You have built a market, but nobody is using it.
Very good.
Okay, so it is, if you do not engage properly, then obviously you may think you have done a project, but then the benefit is not inherent to the use.
All right. So if you fail to plan, it means you have planned to fail.
Exactly.
On the front of the stakeholder engagement. Yes. That's exactly what I gleaned from your submission. Thank you very much. We're taking a short break and we'll be right back. Stick and stay with us. Hello viewers, welcome once again to Frank's Project Pause, where we educate, inform, and give you the right information that is easily applicable on your projects. We are continuing from where we left off. I'm your regular host, Frank Owusu Asamoah. With me this afternoon is Mr. Percy Asante Ntuajei, and we're discussing projects in general and zeroing in on the National Cathedral as a case study. And so far, Percy has been taking us on a ride on how to properly restructure the entire project in our attempt to salvage the existing situation. Percy, you were giving us some very great information or insights into what could be done properly. We looked at stakeholder engagement and we looked at risk. You gave us the two sides of the coin in terms of positive risk and negative risk. You would agree with me that projects of such magnitude, procurement is a key aspect of the entire project. And that is where you could also have a lot of inherent risk in there. How would you handle procurement on such a project?
Okay, so for capital projects, there are, depending on the approach, there are, let's say, a couple of them, depending on the approach of execution. Okay, broadly, you can have the design, bid, and build. So design, bid, and build is where you are looking at a situation where you want to have a separate entity for the design of the infrastructure, and then a separate entity for the building. So you do the designs, and then you use the design through a procurement, a bidding process, and then you get somebody to execute. Okay, or you can also have the design build, where one entity is responsible for the design, but I think in the case of the National Cathedral, there was Sir Ajayi was responsible for design, and everybody is responsible for the construction. So that is in terms of the approaches. But having, irrespective of whichever approach you go for, you will need to structure the contract such that it caters for the scope, the complexity, and how you also want to manage the risk, whether inherent or outside.
Okay.
Now, you can go for a lump sum. I mean, typically lump sum or a fixed price contract. So this project is $100. You sign an agreement with the contractor. So at least to the owner, you have some certainty in terms of cost. You know it is $100 and you have paid $100. Okay, you can go for a cost plus. So cost plus normally favors the contractors. So you look at the cost, the cost of the execution. So maybe if it is in phases, this phase, this is how much it costs. And then you agree on a margin for the contractor. So a cost plus, the fee is normally a percentage or a fixed amount. You can have time and materials. I mean, but I don't think it might be applicable for such a huge project. So you are just looking to the contractor. He comes with how much time they have spent on the project, the materials they have used, and you already have unit rates agreed between the two of you. So based on what he has expended on the project, you pay them for it. Okay, you can have a guaranteed maximum price. So to the owner, you set a maximum price for the project, and beyond which you would never go. Okay, so that also gives some safety and some certainty to the
budget,
to the owner or to the sponsor or whoever is funding the execution, and then also helps to structure in terms of timeline for the contractor, because you know. So depending on the complexity, depending on how you want to manage risk, I think that fairly such projects, maybe a lump sum, or worst case scenario, a cost plus, because you know what happens with cost plus is you are sharing the risk with the contractor, and I think that it is more used in a volatile environment where price certainty is challenged. Okay, so I think that for such a project, lump sum should be fair.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Great. Now, here's a case when it comes to the selection of contractors and other vendors on that project. We all do understand that there are certain dynamics that come to play in order to provide a fair playing ground for prospective sellers. How would you approach the selection of contractors and other vendors in this regard?
Yeah, it's normally a competitive process. I mean, to get good value, you normally go through a competitive process. I mean, proper competitive process, because sometimes you can go through what seems like a competitive process, but it's already skewed. Okay, so you go through with specific requirements, both in terms of the technical capabilities, financial competence, so that you'll be able to get the best out of it. Okay, yeah. Normally, you can also do some kind of restricted. Restricted tendering will help you to pre-select, you pre-qualify. Okay. So you go to entities that you know either have previous experience of in terms of the level of delivery. Okay, they have done similar projects. So you go directly to them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and ask them to bid. So it is not like open to everybody to bid. But whichever approach you go through, either even through international competitive, it has to be a competitive process with clear requirements, clear expectations, financial and technical, and then a very fair evaluation and assessment process.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. So, in such a process, how do you ensure that you do not have different understanding for different bidders? I mean, you could have your requirements, but on the face, different bidders understand your requirements differently. How do you ensure that such situations do not arise?
Well, for a typical construction project, I think that would be problematic. But you can cure that through maybe either through a supplier or potential supplier conference or workshop, or where everybody who is invited or selected to tender, you can have a short workshop with them. You go through your expectations, the scope, what your expectations are. And then if there are doubts or ambiguities, they can raise, you can answer. I mean, I think it is fair practice, because you don't want in the process to be engaging, the evaluation team to be engaging with one of the bidders or potential bidders. Okay, you want to offer a fair ground to all potential bidders or selected bidders, so that you give them the same information, you answer the same questions, at least, so everybody's on ground zero, and then you know that what they are submitting in terms of proposal is supposed to answer what you explain to them.
Right.
Yes.
Right. That's very, very, very true. Because you have situations where you see the level of disparity between the prices that are submitted by different prospective bidders. You realize that some might have put in some assumptions that might have contributed to their level of pricing. So when you have such a forum or workshop, what you usually refer to as bidders conference, that provides an incentive to everybody, so that you'll be able to have a fair system. That's very true. Now, going into that, you did mention the name of the contractor for this project. Now, you are driving us through a safe place in terms of success. You've taken us through the various aspects, including procurement. Now you have selected your contractor. What next? In the next few minutes, drive us through how you would get us to a successful and...
same for the National Cathedral project? Okay, yes, so you select a contractor, and then you have, obviously you signed some form of agreement or some contractual agreement. Maybe they are supposed to provide some guarantees. They would have done that. It means that you are settled in your mind of their financial muscle or level to be able to deliver such a project. And then obviously you start. They start with their planning. Obviously, the expectation is that you might have a master project plan. Okay, so they should have. It should be visible to them. They should structure their execution around the project plan. You will have a kickoff. Kickoff is like a meeting with your contractor to sort of baptize the initiation of the project. So that from this day forward, we are allocating time and resources for the execution of this project. And then thereafter, your reporting, I'm assuming the work is ongoing, feedback reporting. If there are scope change issues or modifications, it goes through some kind of a defined process. Milestone reviews. Milestones are like checkpoints in the life of the project. Okay, so at this point in time, we need to do this, have this ready. Okay, so those are review points. It helps you once you start skipping your milestones. You're obviously skipping your timelines. Okay, milestones are critical checkpoints even before the end of the project. So you go through your milestone reviews. That you are getting what you are supposed to get at the end of each milestone. Resources, the quality management. So there is a process of validating the work that is being done throughout the execution phase, not just at the end. Okay. So you go through all of that. There is obviously your communication, project team communication, stakeholder team communication, your project steerco, maybe executive level, or in this case, the government or your board, the advisory board, giving them updates. If it requires project site visits, you take them there. Your funders' workshops or sessions. So I said earlier, I mean, you cannot, even though it is a charity, people are donating, you need to, as a section of your stakeholders who are critical, you need to find a way of managing them, giving them feedback, okay, appraising them, and then communicating difficulties, if there are any, to them, so that they know that perchance they can help or give further help to the success of the project. So that is what you do, and it's an iterative process. You do that depending on the length of the project. 2 years, 1 year, you do that periodically until you get to the point where you know that, yes, the project is at a point where it is ready to be handed over to. Then you go through some kind of acceptance or checklist process. Yes.
Okay. You did mention monitoring and evaluation, or monitoring and controlling, which means that there are some deliverables that would go through acceptance along the life of the project, even before the overall acceptance or at the end. Now, there have been situations where when we are nearing completion of a project, everybody becomes excited, we lose our guard, and a lot of projects fail to go through proper closing processes. And a lot of the time, there have been dire consequences to this negligence. Would you be kind to walk us through the best practice when it comes to closing a project properly to prevent further lawsuits in the future, among other negativities?
Okay, so I mean, the critical point to initiate closure is that your deliverables have been met. Even if not fully, they have been met substantially with a few what we call snacks or things that are being corrected.
Punch list
or whatever you call it. Okay, so that is the trigger for you to initiate the closing process, because closure involves a lot of things. You have your stakeholder team workshop, you have your lessons learned workshop, you have your financial reconciliation to be sure that pending invoices, maybe apart from whatever you are withholding for, depending on the contract arrangement. Typically, maybe you are withholding a certain percentage of the contract sum after a period defined by your contract, okay? But your financial reconciliation is a critical part of closure, okay? And then deliverables, okay? So deliverables, financial reconciliation, your lessons learned, you need to make sure that all these are done, okay, before you disintegrate your project teams, so that the teams can go to whatever other assignments that are available to them.
Okay.
So until this is done, you have to keep a skeleton team to make sure that snags or rework that are going on are corrected before there's a final sign off on the closure and handover of the project. Yeah.
Okay. There are situations where certain contracts that involve not too active personnel on site are glossed over, and such contracts are not properly closed with the assumption that once the project has ended, the seller should understand that we have finished. And you find the seller coming back later on with a bill. How do we cure such situations?
I mean, if you say once the project has ended, the end of the project is not determined by the final delivery of the expected outcome.
Great.
Let's say deliverable.
Great.
So give me a phone. The project is supposed to deliver a phone. The phone is delivered. So you are done. You can sit anywhere and send me an invoice. No. Okay. Yes, you have delivered the phone, but there are, depending on how the contract is structured, there are things to be done in the closing of the project. And those ought to be done before a final invoicing, because final invoicing is the last thing that you do before you can say you can even initiate financial. In fact, before you even bring your final invoice, some part of financial reconciliation should have been done. Okay. So you take key milestones against the invoicing arrangement. So at milestone 1, you invoice this amount. It has to be checked that milestone 1 has been done. Then you have invoiced. Milestone 2, milestone 3, up to the last milestone. Some projects, I mean, especially in the private sector, I mean, a final report is a critical determinant of your final invoice. So depending, as I said, depending on the structure of the agreement, you can sit in your office and say that you have done it. But until I get a final report and it is reviewed and we have a closing conference, you cannot submit your final invoice.
Okay. Right. Now, do you also find situations where lessons learned or learned lessons documentations, we tend to gloss over it and wait till the final stages during the closing processes? That is where we look at it. What are some of the disadvantages that could arise when we wait until the closing before we start documenting learned lessons?
Okay, so it may impact other projects, especially if your organization have a similar running projects. Okay, so at the time you are reviewing milestone 1, if there are critical lessons that have been learned, you can as part of, you may not necessarily call, because lessons learned itself, one of the disadvantages with most of the project deliveries that they issue it as a report. I mean, if you send a report, nobody will read. Even at the end of the project, you should have a lessons learned workshop. Okay. The workshop physically, with physical presence, or even if it's virtual, so that people are in, and then you are discussing the lessons learned before the report is an output of that workshop. Okay, so that everybody is aware of what happened and what we have learned. But as I said, if your organization is doing similar projects, it is best practice to do those reviews at the milestone review level. Okay, when you are reviewing milestones, some project frameworks call it toll gates. So toll gates. So at this toll gate, we are reviewing this, and most projects link their invoicing to milestones, the completion of specific milestones. So once this milestone is done, they can invoice. So at that time, you can do a quick review as part of maybe your project steering committee meeting, and then share some lessons learned, so that it will be beneficial to other projects. Okay, you don't wait. So it makes the work at the end of the project easier. So at the end of the project, you are just consolidating all the lessons that you have learned, and then maybe with any new other lessons that you have learned after the last lessons learned workshop, and then you can consolidate that into a report of lessons learned for the benefit of either the industry or for if you have some kind of portal where you share your knowledge for the benefit of other people. Yeah.
So would you then say that learn lessons, the document should also be a living document that is initiated from the very initiation of the project, and you keep on updating it so you get to the end rather than waiting and doing it as an event?
Exactly. I mean, because you can have a 2-year, 3-year project. You might even forget. I mean, the teams might have changed.
Yeah.
Okay. So the lessons learned at the planning stage or what happened at the earlier part of the project might be missed. Yeah. Okay. So it is just like any process in the entire project management life cycle. Okay. So you are doing everything, monitoring, control, quality reviews. You are doing everything from the beginning to the end, especially for capital projects with long timelines.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So at this point on Frank's project pause, what would you say is the pause of the National Cathedral project?
Well, I don't know what you mean by a pause, but if you ask me, it is a good endeavor. It is to the extent that it is supposed to communicate something around our cultural heritage. Okay, it is a good endeavor, but just like any other good intention or any good endeavor, it has to be structured properly. And we have discussed from the beginning of this session that resources are always limited, all the time. There is no exemption for any project. So you want to do something to showcase your religious and cultural heritage, but you must have a cap. You cannot assume that you have unlimited access to financial resources, and therefore you can do anything at any time to represent the same key objective, which is communicating and showcasing your religious and cultural heritage in terms of a national cathedral. Yes. So it has to be structured properly, considering the constraints of the environment within which the project is situated.
Okay. Thank you very much, Percy. You have given us a great deal of information. Now, what would be your advice to the new government with the idea that the project was mooted by the previous government? What would be your advice to the current government in handling the National Cathedral project? You are speaking directly to President John Dramani Mahama. What would you tell him?
Well, I think it should be continued. I mean, yeah, it's obviously reviewed, yes, but the idea of having a national cathedral should not be thwarted or should not be stopped just because it was started by another government. Yes, but it should be reviewed. We need to structure it within the constraint available to us. Okay, that is the best practice. Even the richest businesses, organizations around the world still do projects within some constraints. So we look at the constraints. We can always structure it to fit the constraints and then still project that religious and cultural heritage we want to do.
Right.
But it should not be stopped.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much. So from you, Percy, you are saying that constraints are not always bad things. Constraints rather put us in a better position to be much more innovative and creative in order to accomplish all that we wish to accomplish within the four corners of the constraints. Thank you very much, Percy, for spending your day with us, and we hope to see you once again for you to share such knowledge with us. Thank you very much. Viewers,
Welcome.
we come to the end of today's edition and episode, and we thank you for sticking and staying with us. Let's keep hearing from you. Comment, like, and share the link with your colleagues. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Don't forget that this is coming your way by kind courtesy of Certified Projects Avenue Limited, and we are coming to you live from the studios of Eagle Eye Projects and Event at Adenta in Accra. See you in our next episode. Thank you.
Thank you.